This is the Indy 11 Coaches Show, brought to you by your Central Indiana Ford dealers. Now, let's get an inside look at the players, tactics, and opponents with Indy 11 head coach Sean McCauley.
Welcome back to the Indy 11 Coaches Show podcast presented by your Central Indiana Ford dealers. As always, that is Sean McCauley. I'm Ian Gilmore, and we are here to recap sort of the month and a half that has passed and look forward to the jam-packed schedule that remains this season for the boys in blue. 9 games left of a 30-game season, so we'll preview some of the games coming up and look back on about the last month or so that was, Sean, and it was jam-packed. I want to start with the positives, and immediately I kind of look to the result against Miami, third time you've beat them this year. And it was important because they're a team that's right around us in the jam-packed playoff race in the East. So the response that you got after going out of the Cup in midweek, what did you like best about that?
Obviously, we needed the points, like you said. It was good to get the win. I think we needed to show the supporters that we cared, and we do that all year. I was pleased with the response of the second half in the Cup game. And I think if we get another goal, the game's dead. Obviously, we go out on penalties, and that was disappointing. But, in terms of finishing the Jägermeister Cup as never being behind in any game, with the most points in the whole competition, being in the last 8, the nature of our defeat against the opponent is hurting a lot. But we picked ourselves up and played against a good Miami team. And I think we were fortunate that once Blanco got taken off, it sort of upset their rhythm, and we didn't get the first goal because we were pushing, and then all of a sudden go one behind. But credit to the players, they really did dig in and got 3 points for us, valuable 3 points.
I think it was the first time since May of last year that you had won a game after going behind. So that's one of the biggest positives I feel like you probably take from that. When you look specifically at what went into it, what did go into it that night?
I think a lot of heart, a lot of desire, a lot of the stuff that we needed to show to our fans who are fantastic every week. They needed to see us wear the shirt with a bit of pride, and I thought we did all that sort of stuff. I thought we played really well. I thought Jack Blake was excellent. A little bit deeper position, so that was good, because we tried him out there. But yeah, we've not won the game, but I would point to the fact that when we went to Philadelphia Union and went behind and came back into it and lost on penalties, all these little moments, sample size is so small to say, where you're at and what you're doing. But it was really good to get the win, and I think the players needed it.
You mentioned Jack, and that was probably the best we had seen him, at least so far this season. And when you talk about responses too, you had to yank him at half against Greenville, and he responded the way he did against Miami. What made you want to kind of play him in a different location, I guess, on the field than he had been so far this season, and why did it work?
Jack's one of our best players. So my expectation on what Jack should bring to the team is not a secret. He's well aware of what I expect of him, and by his own admission, didn't perform as well as what he should. I spoke to him on the Thursday after obviously taking him out on Wednesday. And I told him he was going to play centre midfield in the position that he's played, probably brought up in when he was playing for Nottingham Forest as a kid. And I had no hesitation that he would, and I spoke to him after the game as well, that he would put performance in, because it shows you the level of character that he's got, his professionalism, and his desire to prove to me that he is that player that we rely on so much, and he was excellent.
That kind of leads me to the question of, when we talked about when you move him, you've got to fill all the holes from where he came from. What spot on the field is he most impactful in, do you think?
In the first 11, and probably not as goalkeeper. When we've got the squad, we've got a smallish squad size, everybody has to be adaptable and available to play in a position that we need them to play in. What comes with that can be a lack of continuity, but what I can assure everybody is that we don't just do it, turn up on a game day, throw the jerseys in the middle of the room and say pick one and then see where it falls. We'll train all week. The player will know the responsibility he's got, both in possession, out of possession, and in transition, of where he needs to be in that position. And more often than not, it's not something that's completely alien to the player. So we know that he can do it. We wouldn't ask him to do something that we think he would fail in.
He's up to third in club history now in goals with 22. Tyler Pasher has 24 and Ayman Zayed has 27. It would take a lot for him to get there this year, but kind of just, your thoughts on kind of just his ability to change the game with goals or assists and positively influence things.
He'll beat that record, 100%, no doubt. He might get to second by the end of the season, but 100% he will be the club's all-time leading scorer by the end of next season. So, what he needs to do is obviously I'd love him to break it this year, but he's just got a really good ability to slow himself down in moments when you need to be really quick. And some people snatch at that, and we saw that at the weekend against Louisville, and whereas he's got that ability to just take an extra breath, an extra second, and be able to have the technique to put it in the back of the net.
Is that in kind of an upbringing thing, or is that a mentality?
I think it's probably a general ability of the player to find himself in the right spot. It's very difficult to teach somebody to calm down, and you've got a little bit of extra time. And I would say that the confidence probably comes from the fact that he's done it on numerous occasions and been successful because of his technique. So then he is able to have that confidence to take that extra touch or that extra second.
Next thing I kind of wanted to touch on with you is, and this is from an article Nick Murray from The League wrote, upon XG this season, Indy, we've got about just under 26 expected goals. And this is also, by the way, pre-Louisville stats. So I know these have probably changed a little bit, but not too much over the course of 21 games. You've scored 6 more goals than that. So before the Louisville game, it was 32 goals scored on 26 expected. What do you put that down to?
I would say it might be down to the opposition not defending as well on some of the attempts that we've had. You look at Jack's goal against Miami, where there's a lot of defenders behind the ball, but he's still able to manipulate it and scores from outside the 18-yard box. Similar to probably Quinney's free kick earlier on in the season. So that's probably where the expected goal points are lower, but the ball goes in the back of the net. To exceed expected goals is a really good thing. And it shows you that you're creating a lot of chances. And I would say that if Louisville's was added, I would say that, that number's probably come down a bit because we had a lot of chances that should have been high on the expected goals and we didn't take them. So pluses and minuses.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing too is there's been games this season where we've said probably should have put a couple more away. So even though you are outperforming it, there's some things left on the table. But when you think about the fact that it could be, 6 or 7 more goals throughout the season, you're doing some really good things offensively.
Yeah, because we try and create a lot of chances, so that's a good thing. And there's a balance with looking at the expected goals scored, because there's times when we've gone through, and I think the game against Louisville, I think Malik goes through and it hits his knee and he doesn't even get an attempt at goal. Yeah. So that doesn't be jotted down as an attempt at goal, and I think that's a real good attempt at goal.
Yeah, or the cross and the almost own goal at the weekend.
Own goal
as well.
doesn't get put down as an expected goal, and likewise if we cross the ball and I think it was earlier on in the season, it might have been first couple of games, and I think somebody just missed it at the edge of on the goal line. I think it might have been Bruno. So you're not getting that point for that. Conceding is a different matter.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that too, because that's kind of the flip side of it. Is it's been not good. You've conceded more than expected. Again, pre-Louisville it was 37 conceded on about 25 expected. So that is 12 goals more. What does that come down to?
Comes down to that if we'd have stopped the goals going in that shouldn't go in, we'd probably have about 5 more points. And I think if you look at the data on expected points, which obviously takes the value of the expected goals for and against, and also expected threat, we'd have probably 5 more points.
What is expected threat?
as in, so it takes into account where the ball goes into the box, who's in the box, and if it doesn't end in a shot, it's, it takes into account the expected threat.
So not just like XG, because it has flaws. We're talking about this, but I know XG has flaws.
Yeah, it
because
does.
like you said, when Malik's in on goal, if it hits off his knee and goes out of bounds, when he would have had, probably a shot worth 0.4 XG or whatever, it doesn't take that into account.
Going to the defensive side of it, we've conceded too many goals. And we can look at a lot of things, but we haven't conceded a lot of shots. So either we've been really, really unfortunate with the shots that we've conceded that have gone in that shouldn't have gone in, and the opposition have been really lucky that they've gone in, or we probably should have done a better job at stopping the ball going in the net.
And it's probably a combination somewhere in the middle of those, because we've talked about how luck plays into games.
Yeah, massively. And I would say regarding statistics, the problem in soccer and statistics is every year we come out with a different statistic.
Yes.
So you never get used to understanding what the value of the stat is. I would argue that 10 years ago we were looking at possession correlating with wins. Now we say possession has got nothing to do with wins. So all that data that was collected on possession is now out the window. I'm presuming that in another 5 years now we've got expected threat, expected goals might go out the window. And you've collected all this data and everybody's living by the data that we're collecting at this moment in time. Unless you stick with the same analysis and data collection for a number of years to get a sample size that correlates with winning, then you're never going to understand what actually gets you over the line to win a game. We can look at all these individual things season by season. I would say that arguably we were luckier last season than we have been this season. We finish in fourth and get to the semi-final of the cup. And I would say some of them games we were quite lucky. I think we won so many on the bounce, and there were some where we would have gone, can't believe we've won it. And this season we've been unlucky. Yeah. But if you look at all the data can change in the next 2 or 3 years, and you can't really go back and say, well, that's why we won or that's why we got beat. We've got to go back to the raw data of, and I think the supporters will like this, stop the ball going in one end and score it in the other. Everything else in between will determine how good we are in terms of getting the ball into the opponent's area to score a goal, or stopping the ball coming into our area to stop a goal. And that's what it'll always come down to. The expected goals and things like that are really good for us to speak to the players about, because I did come in after the Louisville game and our stats were better than Louisville. In terms of, expected threat, expected points, we were better than them. And we lost the game and didn't take any points, and I'm absolutely gutted about it. What I've got to do is make sure the players don't get too down and despondent, because I thought we played okay. And I think the supporters know we played okay. And that's where we can use the stats to our advantage to make sure that we keep a steady hand in the last third of the season, knowing that we've not been too far away all season, even though we feel like we're a million miles away.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's such a nuanced feeling too, and I know that like everybody else feels it also, but you and everyone internally feels that as well. And I think it's much different when you can on the external you can feel it and then go back to your life, and you come back on game days and stuff like that. And not to say that people don't live it, because people do live it. We know with how much some of the supporters live it, but I think there's a difference when you feel it, and then you feel a natural burden to affect it and to change it. So,
and I've got the responsibility to do that, and I will do everything I possibly can to make sure that we do everything we can to get results, because I am also a football supporter.
Yes.
And I also support my team, and I'm telling you, the amount of changes I would want in my team is unreal, and I just want them to win every time they play. And I understand my responsibility is to give that same effort to make sure that our team wins for our supporters.
Yeah. There has been that dip in form in the last month, but it's been interesting to me because in terms of looking at the performances, and you can correct me on this, but I haven't seen too many differences in some of the games that we've won this season. So I say that, and then I'll just ask you, you're in the last month or so, although the results haven't been exactly what you've wanted, what are some of the positives you're taking away from what you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I can go along all season and say the teams that we've gotten beat against, disappointed in El Paso, disappointed with the first half against Greenville, other games, when I look at the Las Vegas game, we get beat in the last minute. We murdered Las Vegas.
Yeah.
We should have been, that game should have been dead and buried in the first half. So I can't really see many where I'm going, that's one where we've really not performed and we've really let ourselves down. The couple, El Paso away I didn't like, and Greenville at home for the first half I didn't like. Charleston in the first half at home, we gave them the game, gave away 2 goals too early, too easy. So overall in this last month, I think we've just not picked enough points up. But we're still in it, and that's the thing. If we win on Wednesday night, I think we go into the playoffs on 7th with 8 games to go, and things will look a lot different. Problem we've got is we're playing against 2 of the next opponents, and Louisville included, are coming into the best 3 teams in the league. But we know what will be in terms of if we give every effort like we have done this last month, then we'll give a good account of ourselves.
Part of the problem you've been dealing with right now is you look at kind of the injuries that have been sustained. Aiden Stanley's obviously been out for a while. Hayden White has been out for a little bit. Now Pat Hogan got hurt. When Hunter's battling a knock in his hand, and you've got a 22-man squad, you're down to 18. So boom, there's your squad selected. But there is good news on the front in terms of players. What can you tell us about that?
We're bringing a defender in from Cincinnati too. Brian Schaefer, he's a good player. He'll come and join the squad from now to the end of the season. And if we see anything else, I'm sure that as long as it's right for everybody, we'd make another move, because we are light on bodies. And when we have to move players around, that's what the squad's for. So, we lost Aiden Stanley, which was big, but Finn McRobb went and did a job there for a little bit. Oliver Bryans has played there now. That's not their natural position. And then we've played Quinny there, and out of the 3 people that filled that role, Quinny's been the best one. So, we've got a squad for that reason. And when Quinny moved out there, it means Cam gets more of a regular run in midfield, and so you just got to balance it as best you can. I think when you lose, Aiden Stanley, defender, Hayden White's been out, he's returning probably in the next couple of weeks, so that's good for us. And then we lost Pat Hogan for 3 or 4 weeks with a knee injury. He's on crutches at the minute. That's when we had to go and say, listen, we need a specialist position, because centre-back is probably the one where you don't really want to be playing a central midfield player or, a full-back in them positions. Whereas the other areas you can move around a bit, like Jack Blake went from being, an attacking midfield player to a central midfield player, and Quinny being central midfield player to a wing back it's a little bit closer, but centre back's probably a specialist position.
I know that this is more, it's not head coach that decides all these things, but when you already got a relatively small squad of 22 guys, I guess why does it take to getting down to 18 to then make the moves to kind of supplement and bring people in?
Yeah, I just think that even if we'd have gone to 18, if we had the balance, then I'd be all right with it. But the imbalance is we're low on defenders. So once you're low on defenders, and then you start moving people around and saying, well, that can cover that, and we can maybe move a player into that position. We obviously lose it somewhere else, but then somebody else can cover that position. I'm quite fine with that. But when we lost Pat, I felt the need that we needed then to go out and get a specialist defender, centre back. All the others, I think we've got good balance on, and we'll just go with what we've got.
So in terms of players that you've used so far this year, you've used everybody, so 22, and that is second lowest in the league. Hartford's got 21, Pittsburgh's got 22.
What we're going to realise when we're saying 22 and 21 and 26 being the median and 28 in MLS is a different animal.
Right, and that's just more for context.
It's a different animal because they have a squad size of 30 with a salary cap, and they can loan players up at different times of the year from the second team. So that's a different animal. When you look at ours, I think the highest number of players played is Phoenix at 30.
32.
32 now. Yeah. Of that, their squad size will probably be still around 26 because they'll have moved players out. So that's what we've got to look at. And, I think when you look at Pittsburgh and Hartford, who are with us with 21 players and 22 players, they've obviously got players in their squad who they've not used. And fortunately for us, we've got a squad size of 22. You know, the average squad size probably is 25 in the USL. But from our 22, everybody's played. So what that means is we've made the right decision to sign these players because they've all played and taken the field. If we can make the playoffs and we understand then that we made the last 8 of the Jägermeister Cup and we can make the playoffs and all these 22 players have contributed, and then we've done a good job. If we don't make the playoffs, then we've got to look at it and say, probably brought 1 or 2 in that we need to improve on. And that's how the club should be looking at a long-term plan. Whereas if you were saying, which we did last year, I think we played 32 players last year. When you're making that many changes and moves, you never get any consistency. And what we need to do, in my opinion, at Indy 11 is be a consistent, well-oiled machine that keeps churning out results. Like I said before, we've never made the playoffs 3 years in a row, so I'm hoping that we can, because that gives the supporters something to hang their hat on. And you do that by consistency. And if we can make it this year and we've used every single player, then it means that we've got something right. Whereas the other teams, like your Hartford and your Pittsburgh, might have 3 or 4 players that don't play for them all year. And I'm not talking about academy players, I'm talking about maybe 2 unused goalkeepers or a centre forward that's in there that's, you know, not got his chance because you've gone with the one that you wanted to be your number one striker. So for us, if we can get some success at the end of the year, then all 22 have contributed, and I'll be really proud of that fact.
So is it fair to say that almost as important as looking at the amount of players that you've got is looking at keeping consistent cores year to year?
I think so. And I think if you look at, you know, our rivals with Louisville, look at McCabe and you look at Ownby coming back on, you look at Sean Tosh, you know, they've got players in there that are constant people that will come back. You look at De Villa now, he'll take over that role and he'll be one that stays in. So yeah, we need to do that, but we also need to understand that there's going to come a point where them players age out of the squad. And I'm not speaking for anybody else, but Louisville will go through that, and that's when you then have to start bringing the younger players through, which is why somebody like Logan Needling is so important to us. You know, he's played some minutes this year. We still value him. We still think he's going to be a good player for us. He's just got to understand that it's going to take a little bit longer and a little bit more experience. And you know, that's I think what Louisville have done really well. They've given the young players a chance, taking them back out again, give them another chance, taking them back out again. And they can do that because the core of the group's really strong. So for me, I think we should build around a really strong core, keep developing the young players and get the most and everything we can out of the older players who are what I call culture builders. So when anybody new comes in, the older players, tell them what the responsibilities are of being an Indy 11 player. Even down to the things like, you know, at the end of every game, we've got a tradition, we have to go and see the supporters, no matter what the result is. That sort of thing, that culture builders are so important. Eventually, them culture builders age out. Once they age out, it's then up to that core group, who are the middle tier, to then take that responsibility, and the young ones who are bringing through, like Logan, goes into that middle tier group, and they become regular starters for us, and they become the core again. And that's what you should have.
And the process repeats and repeats in an ideal world. Yeah. You talking about that right now, you do have the oldest squad in the league in terms of average age. So how do you balance kind of that, keeping these core? Because if you look at kind of the older guys, obviously Elvis, Romario, Quinny, Musa, Hayden, Jack's starting to get up there a bit. All guys that are relatively reliable. And that are, some of them are, you know, your first names on the team sheet. So where do you kind of find that balance of keeping them involved as long as you can, but also realizing that in the long term you want to keep that age down a bit?
If we win, then obviously everything looks really good. And if you don't, then you obviously need to make choices on what you do with them. But they've been great for the most part this year. But we do recognise that in order to have the long-term plan or the consistency that the club needs, we need to probably, you know, look at getting younger. I will say that the league the USL is in a transitional moment now, and I've only been in it for 2 years. But having been at an MLS club who fielded a team in the USL when we were putting youth teams in it, the league's gone so far away from that. There are no youth teams in it anymore. There are no easy wins. There are no easy points. If you look at both conferences now, everybody can get in the playoffs. So I understand a little bit of the league when I was in the MLS, based on putting a youth team. When I was at the Portland Timbers, we fielded our youth team more often than not. So the league's in a transition. That means all the clubs now are in a transition. Somebody like Louisville, who's been consistent with what they're doing, their transition is going to be a lot easier to cope with. Our transition probably would be a little bit rockier because we've never done that in the past, where we've gone and got players who are some of the best in the league, and we've just gone, right, yeah, let's throw this together and let's make it work. Based on historical results and league standings, it's probably not worked as well as what it could have done. So my opinion is, I think at this moment in time, while the league's in transition, I think it's a real perfect time for the club to be in a good transition, and let's build something that we can say, yeah, we're going to be part of it, and when it gets rolling and the league takes effect with this promotion, relegation, and now all the new teams coming in and all the new investment, let's have something that's really stable and clockwork, machine-like, where we can go and we can really give a competitive team for the supporters to get behind.
What are the actionable things and steps to get there to accomplish that?
So while I'm saying that the USL is in transition, the MLS Next Pro has also been in transition. Because now they're not playing in the USL, the MLS Next Pro started 3-4 years ago, and it was very much at the very start a youth team league. And if you look at the average age now across the USL, the MLS Next Pro teams, it's increased from where, and there's still some 16, 17-year-olds playing in it, some 18-year-olds, but now you're looking in that league and there's a lot of players from the age of 24 to 25. A lot of players who come straight out of the college draft, if they get drafted, go straight to the second team. The players who don't get drafted go to second teams in the MLS, rather than just moving all the academy players up, because that league has become a lot more competitive. So for us now, we've got an extra league to recruit from, whereas prior to that, there wasn't. And I would say even in the last 3 or 4 years, you probably might not have recruited heavily in that league because they're all 18, 19. Whereas now that's changed a bit. So there is a lot of transitional moments happening in soccer in the US with MLS Next Pro. The MLS will be the machine that it's going to be. And obviously the USL with the promotion, relegation and the amount of clubs that are coming into it.
Looking forward, you're 1 point off the playoffs with a game in hand over Rhode Island, and then obviously you beat Hartford on Wednesday. You overtake them with the head-to-head and get into 7th. So we've seen the playoff scrap. It's 4 points between 8th and 12th right now. Things change week to week, so we're probably not going to know what exactly is happening until we get closer and closer to the end of the season. And you've said already it would be the first time the club's in the postseason for three seasons in a row. Now the bad part is you're playing the hottest team in the league right now. So as you game plan for Hartford, even though they've sold Jang, they're playing really well. What has kind of impressed you about them lately?
They've got a lot of confidence and belief in the results. A little bit like when we went on the run last year, we didn't feel as though we would get beat off anybody. That run's going to come to an end. So we've just got to go there with our belief and confidence and a steady hand of, we've been doing okay. Let's not worry too much about what the position of the league is. Let's worry about each game as we take it in hand. And this one's a really important game for us. And we'll go up there and try and take the 3 points. No point in playing for a point at this stage. We'll make that decision of whether we lock it down because we need to keep something, and that'll be determined by game state in terms of how it goes. But preparing the players, we need to go up there and try and get a win.
What do you need to do internally to have success? We
need to make sure that, obviously you've mentioned that we've conceded too many goals. So we need to make sure that we are aware of their direct play. They've got some good forwards, even though they've let go of Deng. Edwards and Ingalina are players in this league that are at the top of the game, would probably play for the majority of the USL teams. So we need to manage them. They also have a way of playing that can go from back to front really quickly because they've got a lot of pace in the team. So we need to manage that. And that sometimes leaves them a little bit open. So when we have the ball, we need to make sure that, with the front players that we're playing, that we can get the ball into them quickly and expose them when they're a little bit open.
It's a long road trip. You leave on Tuesday, you don't get back till Sunday because you're straight into Charleston after. So that adds, another factor and a bit of difficulty into it, kind of like when you played Philadelphia and then straight out to Sacramento earlier this season. And as someone who was on that trip, those are grueling away trips when you're away from friends and family for 5-6 days. Mm-hmm. Those can be tough. But straight after you go to Charleston, and they're a team that's kind of had our numbers the last few years. What do you have to do to kind of change that pattern?
We'll have a different plan for Charleston. That's got to be the case because of the way they play. And we've also got to wait and see what happens on Wednesday, like with the recovery of the players. So there might be a situation where we send a couple of players back from Hartford if there's any injuries, or and we'll bring maybe a couple of new fresh players to Charleston. But yeah, going in there with a different plan, we have to go there and make it really difficult for them, because you can find yourself, as probably we know from a couple of years ago and last season, you can go from 1 to 3 and 4 very quickly. We did it last year. Hartford did it a couple of weeks. Loudon did it a couple of weeks ago. I think they were 3 or 4 down after 30 minutes. So we've got to make sure we keep it nice and tight there.
And then past that, it's a lot of games that are important, especially in this playoff race. 9 games left in this season. Any kind of just thoughts on the rest of the way and what you've got to do to make sure you're in the playoffs?
We have got to make sure that we don't react to each individual moment in the game negatively. There are going to be times through the next 9 games where we go ahead and we can't then worry too much about what's going to happen and drop back, or if we go behind, we can't then worry too much and say, it's not going to be on that. We've just got to keep a real steady hand and try and take each game as it comes and try and get into the playoffs. And that's got to be the focus, is just taking one game at a time.
Anything else from your side that you want to add?
No, I'm all good.
Cool.
What about you?
Nope, nothing else from this side either.
But you've added something on social media.
Yeah, this will be my last episode of hosting the Indy 11 Coaches Show podcast. It's been cool. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed these kind of longer form discussions we get to have, because it's kind of like post game. You get to talk for a few minutes, and there's not as much of a chance to ask some more general and overarching questions. So this has been really cool to kind of get at least a little glimpse into your mind of the way you think about football, and I feel like I've become a bit smarter about the game since we've done these, so they've been fun.
Well, hopefully. And what I will say is, from everybody, I think, associated with the team, supporters probably included, staff, everybody that's in around the training ground, for sure, you're going to be a big miss for us. So I wish you all the best in your next move.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Sean. And that'll do it for this episode of the Indy 11 Coaches Show podcast, brought to you by your Central Indiana Ford dealers. As always, go check out the shop.indy11.com. And, I won't see you next time, but I'm sure he'll see you next time at some point. See you, everybody.
This is the Indy 11 Coaches Show, brought to you by your Central Indiana Ford dealers. Be sure to like and follow this podcast on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening. To watch the video version of this podcast, subscribe to the Indy 11 YouTube channel.